Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Let's law better. Together we explore topics of interest to legal operations. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, like, follow, say hello. In short, engage. And don't forget to have a blast. Shaking up the legal world takes a lot of elbow grease. So let's make sure we've got each other's backs along the way. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. It's good to see you all. As you know, we have been on the book road show. If you haven't heard, about 50 of us wrote this book. I feel like being on a white when I do this there. We wrote this amazing book. It's full of great insights, and I want to bring the authors so they can share them with you, and you have an opportunity to engage and ask questions. So today I'm going to have a conversation about something I don't really actually know very much about, and I very much look forward to this. Jeff, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jeff Kruse. I am a legal consultant. I started my own legal consulting business about 6 years ago, and I operate Key Legal Operations Consulting and hope to help make law better.
I love it. I love it. So do I. Before you founded your consulting group, and I actually want to understand a little bit more of what you actually, why don't you do that? Tell us what your consulting does, who you work with, who are your clients, and what value do you add to them?
Well, before the pandemic, because I'm a solo consultant, I started with the idea of micro niching down to small legal departments and small law firms. And so I was consulting with small legal departments and law firms on process improvements, technology acquisition and implementation. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of that work dried up. A lot of my clients or prospective clients just simply said, all we want to do is stay in business. We don't have time for improvements. So a lot of that work dried up. And as luck would have it, I teamed with some other consultants and we landed a Fortune 100 company client that I wound up consulting with for 17 months, helping them reorganize their legal support team, some legal operations, and managing part of the team as well as some outside managed operations for them. And when that engagement ended, I started another one with a small genomic medicine company, and I've been consulting with them for about a year. And so that's basically what I do.
Okay, from small law to in-house departments. I love that transition. And Bo says hi. Well, hello, Bo. I've missed you. We've had great conversations with Bo in the past. I hope he returns as a guest. He's full of great insights, just like all of my guests. Jeff, I love that you've been able to pivot your business as a consultant when the time calls. What have you done before you were consulting? How did you end up consulting small law firms and then eventually legal departments?
Well, this is not a plan that I ever had to do legal operations or consulting. I was very fortunate to go to work for the one law firm that I wanted to work for when I was in law school. Actually, even before law school, I knew about this law firm. It was a big law firm, the biggest in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was fortunate enough to get an offer and be able to go in house. I wanted to be a bankruptcy lawyer, but the economy was too good. They didn't need another bankruptcy lawyer. So I wound up doing pharmaceutical and medical device defense litigation and working with companies whose goals were to improve people's lives. And I wound up being fortunate enough to work for one small company that made pacemakers and defibrillators. And they became my favorite client because their employees would come to work every day with the motto of save and improve lives every day. And they truly believed all of that. And in 2005, the New York Times published a series of unflattering articles that led to a lot of lawsuits. They needed some extra help. And I wound up ultimately being seconded there and then offered a full-time job with the company. And so that was my first in-house role. And as part of the in-house role, I wound up getting into legal operations in part because I kept identifying needs the company had: e-discovery, electronic billing, billing guidelines, process improvements, written procedure changes. And each time I suggested something, I was told, okay, then do it, make it happen. And so I put together a small team and we did that. And that was my introduction to legal operations. And I left that medical device company to go back to the practice of law, only to find out that I didn't really want to practice law anymore. I thought I did because that had been the plan. What I learned was I had caught the continuous improvement bug, and it's not something you can vaccinate against, or it's not something you can cure, really. And what I decided was I could be more used to clients by helping them learn how to practice better than I could taking depositions or answering interrogatories. So that's why I founded Key Legal Operations Consulting.
It's a condition. You have to live with it. I love it. You said something interesting about bankruptcy law, that you wanted to practice it. Unfortunately, economy was too good. I think the rest of the world was celebrating that part.
Everybody else probably was, but see, I wanted to go into bankruptcy law because there was a written code, but the code was ambiguous enough. There was enough vagaries in the language that you could twist and turn and argue different sides and different cases and applications. And I thought that would be great because I am fascinated by, as the title of my chapter in the book is about communications and making sure that you are clear. And you might think that the bankruptcy code is abundantly clear, but what excited me was it's not. You can make different arguments that one clause or one provision can mean three or four or five different things. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, I'm actually fairly familiar with bankruptcy code. Yeah, and I find it very interesting, the negotiation dynamics in the room during bankruptcy. And what I love about the practice of bankruptcy is the reliance of the federal rules of procedures. So it is one of those areas where you have a repeated number of players, and your skills as negotiator are very much tested, and it's all done very civilly in the context of federal rules of procedure, which I absolutely love. You also mentioned another thing, that you didn't plan to be legal ops. I'm yet to meet somebody who has. I mean, I think one of those days will be in about 5, 10 years. There are a few folks who go to law school or become professionals with an eye toward sort of being professionals in this field. However, most of us who ended up in this field one way or another, I think basically have a story kind of like you have. Hey, this could be better. Cool, go do it. Help yourself.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the things that when I started the Key Legal Operations Consulting, which had a different name at the time, but uh, was because I wanted to help people who were in my shoes not have to experience some of the pain that I felt in being the practicing chief litigation officer of the company, plus doing all of these other things. And when I say doing these other things, I mean I was leading a team that was dedicated to continuous improvement, dedicated to helping not just practice and deal with the lawsuits and the claims, but make things better and make the operations better, and including make things better for functions outside of legal. And so I wanted to take those lessons and learnings and help other people who were similarly situated to me when I was in-house or when I was outside counsel. Because one of the other things that I learned being in-house was there are a lot of improvements that outside counsel could make that would make the lives of the clients better. And so even when I'm consulting with a law firm, I always have my eye on how is this improving the lives of the ultimate clients. So that is a client-based focus that I always have is, yes, I get how it's going to improve your life as a practitioner at this, 10 lawyer law firm, but is it going to help your clients or is it going to hurt your clients? Is it going to make it more difficult for your clients? Because if that's the case, I probably don't want this project because
Yeah.
they're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy.
Yeah. No, the outside lawyer can do many things, obviously with a substantive legal advice, but also operationally they can really streamline all kinds of things, from bill review to what kind of work product they give, and whether they share a matrix and all kinds of other stuff. I do want to focus on what you've written in this book, which is C Communication Framework. I don't know. It's one of the few things that I know nothing about. Um, what is
Well,
C framework? Tell me more about it.
so C communications framework is something that I've come up with along with a colleague of mine, Cash Butler, and it's C. The S is simple. The first E is easy, and the second E is is effective. Sorry, blanking out there under the
That's
pressure of the
okay.
interview.
I forget what I've written all the time. I mean, that's what happens when you write a lot. We all write a lot of emails. Sometimes I reread my stuff and I'm thinking, gosh, boy, that was brilliant. And sometimes I reread it and I'm like, oh man, that
Well,
was public for everyone to see too. So,
it's simple, easy, effective communications, and it came from presentations that I started when I was in house, and then continued when I was with the my second law firm, and then as a consultant, where it originally was titled Client Communications in the Twitter Era. So how do you communicate in 120 characters or less, or 140, I guess, characters or less when it originally started. And ultimately, because in operations, everything needs a framework, it became simple, easy, effective. The simple means that the language is in plain English or plain whatever language that you're communicating in. Because one of the things that I love about this book is it is so international. The authors are from all around the world. So whatever language that you're using, you're communicating in plain language. You're not using legalese. You're not using technical legal operations speak, but you are communicating with the audience that you need. Easy means that it is easy for your audience to understand, whether it's something that's written or it's a verbal presentation. It's easy for them to understand. And easy is judged solely from the standpoint of the audience, because everybody thinks that whatever they're doing, what they've written a 20-page memo, that it's easy to understand, when in fact it really isn't easy to understand. And I can provide some guidance on that. And then effective simply means that it got the job done. Whether it was simply informing people, then it was effective in conveying the message that you wanted and that it's memorable. Or more likely than not, especially in legal operations, effective means it prompts the action that you want someone to take. So if you need somebody to change the process that they've been using on NDA approvals and reviews, or getting electronic signatures versus wet signatures, that they actually start doing that and not following the procedure that they've been doing for the last 5 years. So simple, easy, effective.
I love that acronym, and I'm glad we've been able to incorporate our mutual friend Cash. Wherever he is, I hope he is watching us, and we're saying hello to him. I am looking at your chapter 10, and I am noticing that it is pretty short. Tell me more.
Well, that was by design, because as a lawyer, I am used to, or being trained, classically trained as a lawyer, I'm used to writing incredibly long tomes about things and then expecting everybody to read it. And it just my effort to be as concise as possible, because while I do note in one of the footnotes that there is hypocrisy because I use acronyms, and I advocate that you minimize the use of acronyms where possible, but C itself is an acronym. I I didn't want to be hypocritical in the sense of writing a 10-page chapter on how you need to be brief in your communications and effective. For instance, one of the things that I've advocated for clients recently is take the lesson from YouTube, maybe not so much TikTok, but if you could do a TikTok video, length, great. But YouTube videos, 3 to 5 minute training videos or educational videos for people, in the organization, so that they get the message that you're trying to send. Try targeting something like that, as opposed to, I had one client who had a 120, 130-page PowerPoint presentation on how to use a new system. I, there is nobody on this planet that is going to go through a 130-page or 130 slide idea of to learn how to use a new system. But if you do little segments, 3 to 5 minute segments on, this is how you enter a new vendor, or this is the first part of entering a new vendor, and it's 3 to 5. They might do each one of those, but be as brief as possible. So when the publisher reached out to me and said, could you put a little more meat on the bones there for the
No,
chapter?
I think it
My
has
response,
plenty of meat.
my
I
response
will.
was no, no. My goal was to be the shortest chapter in the book if possible. I haven't confirmed that, Olga. I'm reading each chapter based on who you're interviewing the next day. So
So I'm creating a syllabus in your life. I love it. And I'm not gonna deny you. You will not confirm. I will not gonna deny it. So I think your hypothesis is right. John Lindsay says hello. He loves your framework. So do I. I don't usually read stuff on my show, and I most definitely don't read references portion. But there are some references here that are worth noting. Reference one: hypocrisy is strong in this chapter. Oh, I love this. This is only going to get better. While noting the importance of minimizing acronyms, the guiding concept for clear, concise, and constructive communication is itself an acronym. See? Okay, I love that. Point one. According to the Hemingway Editor app, the readability score for this chapter is grade 13. Wait, I thought they're only 12. I come from the country where we had 11, and I had an identity crisis when I had to go through 12. So, but now I'm seeing 13. We're going to talk about it. Give me a second, because there is a point number 3 that I think really worth mentioning. The author's use of an acronym with multiple possible meaning exemplifies the problems associated with using acronyms in communications. Oh, I love that deprecated humor. Now, let's talk about grade 13, because did I drop out or what happened?
no, no, that what that means is that it's probably for entry level college, freshman college, first year at university level of writing. And one of the things that I
No,
note
it
in
is for
the
people
chapter,
who like can't stop counting, they can't reset. So instead of saying this is a freshman year of college, they say it's grade 13. Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
okay. I got it.
no, 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 it's not for those who have been held back an extra year in high school or secondary school. No, one of the things that I note in the chapter is that for a lot of us in legal operations and lawyers, we're dealing with incredibly brilliant individuals. When I practiced in the pharmaceutical medical device industry, I was dealing with engineers, PhDs, MDs. I came up with something to keep in the back of my head all the time, which was never assume you're the smartest in the room. And I tried my best to always meet that. I tried to avoid assuming that I was the smartest person in the room, but you do need to make the language something that is usable, that is simple for that audience. So make it something that doctors or PhD engineers will understand. So you don't have to, I don't like to use the phrase dumb it down, but you don't have to simplify it to the level of a fifth grader or an eighth grader. But I used Hemingway to see, how simple had I gotten it. This is a treatise for lawyers and legal operations professionals and other professionals in the legal industry. So these are pretty well educated folks. And I felt that I didn't need to simplify any more than grade 13, according to Hemingway.
Yeah, one of the comments I receive after I speak on fairly big stages is that, oh, you speak like a normal person. As opposed, I guess folks expect a lawyer to show up and start using big words. It's always an interesting comment. I usually say thank you. I really don't know what to do with some of those expectations sometimes. I guess I will confirm that I am a normal person. There is a level of normalcy to me and simplicity that I do speak like a normal person. I love let's talk about the S in C, the simplicity. And you've given a few examples, started talking about legal operations and lawyers. Let's focus on legal operations because, just like law, technology is full of jargon, and you can sound overly educated and lose a lot of people in the process. I mean, they will nod politely and you will see their eyes glaze over. And if you're wondering why, it's you, not them. They will tell you it's them, but it's you. So, absolutely you. Tell me, in the context of legal ops, You have multiple ways to communicate. It's very important that people actually register, and then not only do they register, actually agree wholeheartedly and follow. So you actually need to inspire action, if not obedience, so to speak, because you legal opting by yourself is not going to result in change. How is it? What is your approach in the context of legal ops to get to that simplicity?
Well, I would take a lot of cues from the interview that you did yesterday with Chad. His approach and his storytelling for how he was able to get things implemented is exactly the same model, except I wasn't as successful as he was at first because I was still lawyering instead of legal opsing. That's right, I'm making opsing a verb.
I did it
Uh,
first, by the way. So I said it and I was like, I'm just going to pretend this is a totally a word, that legal up could be a verb. But you did it too. So it is actually like it confirms that it is a word. So we normalize, you know, grammar, taking it apart and putting it together the way we like it.
But my story is one of lack of success instead of at first, because when we needed some technology, of course, you have to sell this to other parts of the organization, IT, finance, accounting, others. And so when I went to present to the joint committee that would be approving, I spoke great legalese about how wonderful this technology would be for me and my team and the legal department, and I failed to convey to them how it was going to benefit their organizations and benefit them. And needless to say, you could guess how that meeting ended. I was not successful. And fortunately, though, I work with great people, and two of them, a manager and a director from the finance organization, pulled me aside after the meeting and said, "We don't understand most of what you said because you were speaking legalese, but we can train you to speak our language and speak the language of business." And this was within the first year or so of me being in house. And they taught me, and it was a very valuable lesson, that in order to effectuate improvements within the organization, you need to be able to speak, as Chad was talking about yesterday, to the needs and wants of the others within the organization. How will it benefit them? How will they see improvement? What pain points will you alleviate? And or what things will you solve that they don't even know need solving, but you do, you recognize that it needs a solution. So it really is, I mean, one of the biggest parts of communication is that it's a two-way street. And one of the most valuable lessons that I learned early in my practice, before my first depositions, the guy who's the head of Kansas Legal Services now, who is a partner at the law firm with me, advised me to listen more than you speak. And I have taken that to heart as often as possible. I'm an introvert for one thing, so that part's easy. Listen more than you speak, and you will pick up on the important points and the important language. One of the things that I did when I was in house, not by choice but by assignment, was I was assigned to work with all these different business functions like quality, the quality system folks, the R&D folks, the marketing folks, the sales parts of the sales team. So I had to go to their meetings. They invited me and learn the language that they were speaking, and learn what was bothering them, not just in legal, but in general, what business concerns that they had, but also what bothered them about the legal department. And then figure out, okay, can we come up with things that will alleviate these, minimize, mitigate to some degree, and then come back to them with, hey, we've got these ideas on things that can help us mutually. And that's a way to start the improvement process. And I don't call it change management because lawyers really hate change. And what I've learned is other folks in other parts of the business also don't like change, but everybody loves it when you improve their lives. So I call it improvement management. I'm here as an outside consultant for improvement of this organization and finding ways to improve things within the company or within the law firm.
Yeah, John is supporting our habits of changing grammar. Thank you, John. I like you too. Thank you for that support. I love that story of we don't understand what you said. You but but we can help you. There's not all hope is lost. Let us teach you our ways. We'll embrace you, and you may become a productive member of our organization. I love those practical tips, and Bo is also pointing out that knowing your audience is important. Let me transition to the ease part of it, because you mentioned that, and I think it dovetails very nicely with what Bo says, that it is very much should be judged from the point of view of your audience. And you've given some great tips on simplicity. What is the sort of top one or two or three tips for the ease of it, and both identifying whether it is easy from the point of view of the audience and actually executing on that to make sure that it is actually, on whatever scale you judge it, is actually easy?
Well, one of the tips that I've learned over the years is test the message. Test it with one or two trusted individuals who won't reveal before it's time to reveal, depending on what it is. If it's something that you don't want the broader audience, test it with folks who will be part of that audience and find out, is this something easy to understand? Also, one of the things that you have to do is you have to separate yourself from your ego, because you have worked on something for a long time, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or a memo or a guide of some sort, and you think that it's going to be easy. But when you test it with somebody and they have 3 pages of notes on how you could make it better, you can't get upset about it. You have to take that as positive feedback where they're trying to help you. Uh, Another way to learn about how to make things easy with your audience is, after you have sent it out more broadly, find out whether or not it actually was easy to understand. Get 360 feedback on it, and then find out. I had a client who had a system. They had a very tight system on how they like to communicate. They had their letterhead for certain things. They had colors of communications that would go out that would mean different things. But almost all the communications were written by lawyers. They were almost all very long, and frequently they would, an 8-page memo would be followed by 4 pages of Q&A, and it just hit me.
That really makes it super clear. The 8 pages plus 4 pages, that just clarifies everything.
So since then, I've said, if you have to have extra pages of Q&A, then it wasn't easy to understand. If you yourself think that you need that Q&A, then no, it's not easy to understand. Maybe you should make it before.
Q&A is your clue that not everything is clear. I love that. I just want to make sure that point is not lost. And you have a few folks that really love your advice about listening more. It's always a good idea. Not only will you come across smarter, but you'll actually learn a lot in the process. You'll actually get smarter, not only come across smarter. And I love the practical tips of easiness. We are coming to the end. I definitely want to talk about the effective part and the top tips you have there. Let's start with measuring. How do you know you're effective? How you given whatever written form or oral form of your message, how do you know you're effective?
Well, in the legal ops realm, when you're talking about implementing a new system or a new process, the adoption rate is one way you know. You can find out because you have only 75% of the people are started using the new system or starting using the new process. Or you can follow up with surveys, follow up with check-ins. Again, a 360 type evaluation to make sure that it was effective. For things that aren't implementation related, but it was just informative, you can check back after a few weeks or after a few months and find out if that information has still been retained. There are a lot of surveys that say that after a month, we've lost 75% of what we heard in a presentation a month earlier. Well, if you've been effective, maybe you've only 50%'s been lost. Then maybe that means you need to send out a little reminder, shorter next time, with remember, this was information, and this is what we were informing you that this is coming, or this is a new process, or something along those lines. But it takes active involvement. Like I say, it's the communication aspect in legal operations is a two-way street. You're communicating out, but you've got to get the communication back and you've got to keep checking. Maybe it's like a roundabout instead of, or a traffic circle instead of a straight line, but where you're constantly checking, going around and making sure that the communication has in fact been received, understood, and acted upon if it required action.
So, what are the practical top one or two or three tips on making effective? I love, well, the roundabout description may need a little bit of selling, right? Because when you made it sound very monotonous, maybe we should come up with a different analogy. But I understand what you're trying to do is to kind of iterative process. But how do you, what is it sort of as a communicator to get to lend to that effectiveness? Well, what
I
is it?
Well, so making it simple, making it easy to understand, those are the first two things on the effective part. Knowing going in that good, effective communications are going to be difficult. Mark Twain is credited with saying that he would have written a shorter letter, but he didn't have time. It takes time. Communicating well is a lot of hard work, and it also takes a lot of getting feedback that the communication is or isn't working, and so that you can keep that process going where you are continually checking to make sure that the messages that you are sending are being effective, but it also takes a lot of planning in advance. So, as part of any project plan, frankly, I think that every legal department and law firm, they need communication program plans. So they come up with plans for how communications will be sent out, who will be sending them, what methods and means they will be, and that it's all planned, that it's thought through, as opposed to on the fly in the urgent or emergent situation where people are doing it. I mean, corporations do that. They have whole communications.
Yeah, so
Um,
let's talk about it. I mean,
function.
communication plan is something that you're absolutely right. Companies do, and sort of there's sort of a series of things. It's a lot of those things are templatized. There's a timeline and various items. What is this sort of? I like that you use this communication program plan. It sounds something like you teach to legal leaders or a legal operations leader. What is it that you teach, and what are sort of the top components of this communication framework?
The main parts are that you come up with written goals and objectives. So, what are your plans going to be for this? With everything, you start with what the ultimate goals are going to be for how you do this, and then you come up with individual plans for how you're going to achieve those things. Build in for the emergent and urgent situations and how you're going to operate under those circumstances. At the company, we of course had a crisis management team, and I was part of the crisis management team. So we always knew a crisis hits, we get the committee together, we start working on this is how things are going to go, and who's going to be doing communicating and what kind of format it's going to take. Plan all of this in advance. Plan your regular routine communications. Figure out how often you're going to have an all department meeting, or have a department presentation at the all company meetings. Whether, if the company gets to make together for town hall meetings every month, how often does legal make a presentation on what are they going to be presenting in order to sell things? What kind of communications do you need to be sending out on a regular basis to your outside vendors? For instance, do you need to be sending out messages every month on reminders on certain things? Do you need to send reminders toward the end of each quarter about the accruals and the budgets that need to go out? Plan all this in advance so that you're not the week before the end of the quarter, as finance is breathing down your neck for what are our numbers for the second quarter of 2024. You've already gotten all that from your outside vendors because you had planned you're going to segment these communications out so that you get every last little bit of information back from the very last vendor, who is always last in getting their information in every quarter. But because you've planned it out in advance, they're going to get it in at 1 o'clock on the day that it's due for you to send to finance. But you know
I
that because you work with them.
Yeah, I love planning communications, and I especially enjoy templatizing it. I use software to templatize quite a lot of my responses because Brittany, who been on the show a few days ago, articulated really well. Creating anything from scratch, the act of creation is a very emotional process and draining process. Whether you create an email or the masterpiece, and if you can do that every day, all day, and you will be less effective, and you will spend yourself, whatever that means to you, emotionally, physically, mentally, on things that actually could be templatized and streamlined much more. So I actually templatize quite a lot of things, not just in my sort of big communications like go to market or rolling up a system or changing the structure of the organization. I find that I write same emails and messages all the time. And so I find it so much easier to just templatize. I have a lot of templates that I access through shortcuts all the time. I find it super helpful. Jeff, we've come to the end, and this has been a very enlightening conversation. I really love that C framework. I love that I learned something in the process, and the communication plan I think is invaluable for the success of legal ops. What is one thing you want folks to remember or do from this conversation?
Legal operations, communications is the core key element of all legal operations. So the book that's behind me that you mentioned at the beginning, Olga, is about using data and artificial intelligence in legal operations and how that's going to be in the future. Well, it's only going to be effective use if you have a good communications plan, have good communications strategies and tactics that you're going to use over time for communicating with your audiences. Legal operations, to me, if all of the world is a stage, all of legal operations is communications. It's communicating with your internal legal department colleagues, it's with the company colleagues, it's with the law firms, it's with the vendors. All aspects are about communication. So finding that way to be effective in those communications and knowing and understanding that that's the key to success is being able to communicate, but also the key to bragging about your success is communicating effectively. So the key all the way around is communications.
Yeah, this is great. Whatever your strategy is, whatever your technology is, it will all die on the vine if you are not going to be communicating. And I love the message of, you're not only communicating through hard things. Yes, transitions and implementations are hard and they require communication for sure, but so do celebrations. I think that's very important because a lot of things are they go uncelebrated if when improperly communicated. Jeff, so good to have you on the show. So thank you so much for your contribution. I know I gave you a little bit of a hard time about the size of the chapter, but the value is massive. So thank you so much for being part of this experience, both in the book and on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I have to thank Humaira for reaching out to me to contribute. I never imagined in a million years that I would get to be on the show with you, but I've been a big fan for a really long time and have definitely enjoyed being on. Thank you very much. I definitely appreciate it. And for anyone who hasn't been on, I highly recommend. This is a great experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Humaira is fantastic. She really did start a movement. Maybe one day she is threatening to join as a surprise guest. I am waiting for that surprise. And thank you both for actively being part of this conversation as well. And thank you, listeners and viewers, for joining and being part of this as well. We absolutely will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self Let's Law Better. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Just remember, the future of law is looking pretty awesome. Let's team up and shake things up in the legal world together. See you soon.